Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar session entitled Shaping the CAP Strategy Plans, focusing on agroecology. I hope the first session went all well. We have around 2 hours today to discuss with an interesting mix of speakers about how we can translate the CAP into practice towards agroecology. Agroecology Europe, who is organizing this webinar, has already prepared and published in 2020 an extensive position paper on how the CAP can be integrated with agroecology principles. I encourage you to have a look at this position paper. But here we will listen further experiences from policy experts at different levels. We will try to make this session as interactive as possible. So along the inputs from speakers, please use the chat box on your web page and try to liaise with us and ask any clarification questions or any proposals or critical points that you have in mind. We try to make this 2 hours as engaging as possible. Let me already introduce the participants and the speakers today. So welcome to Eduardo Cuoco, Director of IFOAM, the International Federation of Organic Agricultural Movements, who is going today to talk about what are the opportunities of the European Green Deal for organic farming and agroecology. Welcome, Eduardo.
Hello, Matteo. Welcome, and welcome to all the participants. Bienvenidos a todos and a todas.
Thank you. We have also Célia Nyssens, Food Policy Officer at European Environmental Bureau, who is going to talk about how to make the CAP more compatible with the European Green Deal, and especially she will focus on the role of the new eco schemes. Welcome, Célia.
Thank you, Matteo. Very glad to be here.
And with us today, there is also Sonia Callau-Berenguer, responsible for Agricultural Spaces Department of Barcelona's Province Council. Sonia will show us the role of a provincial council in the implementation of European policies to preserve and manage peri-urban agricultural spaces.
Yeah, hello, Matteo. Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here with you.
We hope also that when some technicalities are solved, Mr. Uros Prezan can also join. Is the fourth speaker planned to intervene today, coming from the Committee of Regions, who is going to talk about especially on the European Organic Action Plan. I would say we can start, and I'll explain a bit the rule of this webinar session. We will have around 7 to 10 minutes interventions from each speakers. Try to ask questions to them. We will try then to have a debate among us, possibly exchanging questions among speakers. And one of the final outcome of today's webinar is also some concrete policy recommendations. We will invite participants to vote in a poll that will be presented to you at the end. This poll will allow you to vote on a list of policy recommendations that will be used at the end of this forum to come up with a concrete declaration. With this said, I would like to start passing the floor to Eduardo Cuoco. Eduardo, please tell us what are the opportunities, from your point of view, coming from the European Green Deal for organic farming and agroecology?
Yeah, buongiorno, Matteo. And again, thank you very much, Agroecology Europe, for organizing this event and for giving me the possibility to be with you virtually today. And I mean, I prepared a few slides which I would like to share with you, but to use them as a base for a discussion, I would like really to interact with the other speakers and with all the people who's following us from home. And I thanks my colleague Amélie, who's actually working on the CAP, and she helped me to prepare this presentation. So, are you able to see the presentation now? Can you confirm?
Yes, everything
That's
is
great. That's
well.
great. Then technicalities are solved. Now let's go to content. And first of all, just 1 minute about who we are. IFOAM Organics Europe is the regional body of IFOAM Organics International, which is an organization that started 50 years ago, working to promote organic farming all over the world. Our office in Brussels is 20 years old and is very active on the, let's say, the Brussels scene with the objective to shape policy who can support the further development of organic farming. So we have quite a large number of members that cover, let's say, all the aspects of the supply chain, but even more, as you can see from the slide. We count about 200 members now, and we base our work on the international principle of organic farming, which is health, ecology, fairness, and care. And we are indeed trying to bring these principles into European policies. And we worked a lot, really a lot as an organization to propose organic as part of the solutions to the societal challenges that the world is facing now. And we did it by talking with the Commission and trying to offer our solution to them. And then we got a good result. So I'm quite happy that the results were quite interesting. So here you find a slide summarizing all the activity of the Green Deal, because I think it's important to know that the Green Deal is not an environmental policy. Yeah, we are talking about the main socioeconomic policy of the European Union. So it's not about environment, it's not about food, it's about all the different aspects of the economic life of our bloc. But I wanted to highlight for you the area where organic and agroecology can play a role. The biodiversity strategy, organic is mentioned, and agroecological approaches are mentioned. And there is a target of 25% organic land to be reached by 2030 already in the biodiversity strategy. Then there is a role for organic agroecology in achieving the climate neutrality. And there is indeed a role in the transformation of agricultural and rural areas. So there was a vision for rural areas that was published last May from the European Commission, where organic and agroecology are mentioned as tools to achieve the transformation. And indeed, organic is an important part of the farm to fork. And among the activities of the farm to fork, there is now a new European organic action plan that will be presented later on. And then indeed, the topic of today is the common agriculture policy. What role can the common agriculture policy play in the transformation of the food system and in the support to organic? I would like to remind you the 4 objectives of the farm to fork strategy, because I think are interesting to look at this objective from a political perspective. 3 objectives talk about reduction. We reduce pesticide, we have to reduce fertilizers, we have to reduce antibiotics. Only 1 is about increasing. So reduction from a side, increase from another side, and the one about increasing is to work on reaching 25% of organic land. What does it mean? It means that the role of organic farming and all the agroecological practices that are linked to organic is crucial, not only from a production point of view, but now also from a political point of view. Organic is becoming the political tool for policymakers to also achieve the other objective of this farm to fork. So we need more organic farming, we need more agroecological practices, not only because we want to reach the 25% organic land, but also because we want to reduce the fertilizer, the antibiotics, and indeed the pesticide. So I will jump this slide because time is running fast. I wanted to share with you some studies we made about this target and how we can reach that. This is a study we published less than 6 months ago. and there are scenarios for expenditure on the common agricultural policy to reach the 25% organic target. So what we did was to discuss with our membership, with all the interested parts, with all the stakeholders, on what they see as the possible target to be reached in their country, and how much money should be there to make sure that this target can be reached. So I think the main takeaways from this slide is that if we follow the business as usual, we can move from the 9% that we have now of organic share to 15%. So we can more or less double the surface, more or less. If we take into account all the national targets that are already available from national policies, we will reach the 21.2%. But still, we want to reach the 25%. So there is still an extra effort compared to the one that is more already on the table of the different member states to reach this 25%. And we will need enough money to do that, which is the important part. From a technical point of view, there is no strong link between the European Green Deal and the Common Agricultural Policy. It is mentioned, the European Green Deal, in a couple of recitals, but is not in the legal text. It's not in the articles, which makes this link very weak. And as time is running, I will move on. These slides will be available for you if you want to go more into the technicalities. But I would like to share with you a preview of a study that we will actually publish tomorrow. I mean, what we've been doing is to assess how the current draft of the National Strategic Plan is really going to support organic farming and agroecological approaches for the future CAP. So what we wanted to do with the study was to assess the level of ambition of and the target and measures that are being putting in place by the member states, to assess the level of budget allocated to reach this target, and also to understand the level of transparency about involvement of all the stakeholders into the consultation process, because this CAP has this peculiarity. A lot has been given to the member states to be done, but the member states are asked to make a deep consultation process with all the stakeholders. And we are actually a bit concerned. We are a bit concerned because we realize that there is a lack of proper involvement in some member states. There is insufficient ambition and budget to support and incentivize more farmers to convert to organic farming, to take up agroecological measures. And we see that the national strategic plans, the draft that are now circulating, are not doing enough in terms of rewarding farmers for the public goods they produce. So here you find some main findings. I will just mention a few. First, there is a clear gap between the ambitions we have to reach the 25% and the ambitions in the member states. Only a minority of member states has really put enough money to support this transition. Several member states did not publish yet information about the budget, so we could not really assess that. Other member states have planned a budget that's ridiculous. Yeah, the word to be used, not in the study, but in this presentation, is ridiculous. It's a budget that is not sufficient enough even to kick off such a transition. And as I said, there is a lack of transparency. In most member states, the people who's doing the work on the ground, the Organic Farmer Association, the Agroecological Association, the one who should have been involved in this consultation are not really considered. I understand my time is gone. One more slide about the eco schemes. Eco schemes have the potential to be a very powerful tool. It's a good opportunity for this CAP. It's a good opportunity for member states to promote this transition. But eco schemes should be used in the right way. First of all, should be compatible and complementary with the second pillar, which might be not the case in all the national strategic plan we have been assessing in the last days. Should really boost sustainable practices. So we should really have clear eco scheme who are supporting agroecology, who are supporting organic farming, conservation agriculture, agroforestry, and so on. They should really enhance the concept of public money for public good. So really reward the farmers for the environmental benefit that they deliver to the society, and they should have a high level of ambition. So they should really be put into the national strategic plan to raise the competitiveness of sustainable farming system into the different member states. And here as well, we made a guide, which I invite you to read. The reference and the link is in the presentation, in which we explore very deeply the use of eco schemes into the national strategic plans. Some recommendation, briefly. What do we need to make strategic plans a success for the development of organic and agroecology? First of all, we need to set national targets, because this gives the dimension of the efforts the member states wants to take into this issue. We need an adequate level of support. So we need enough money for maintenance and conversion to organic farming. And this can be found via the eco scheme and via the second pillar. And we need to put enough budget. I repeated these three main messages, I think, already 3 times during this presentation, but it's crucial that there is enough budget. We cannot follow the risk to have the right measure in place and not enough budget to support that. And we know that that happened. I mean, we know that in France, in the last period of programmation, there were measures for conversion, but there were no money to pay for this conversion. And a lot of farmers were without support. So finally, I would repeat once again, for the policy recommendation, we really need to make clear that the Commission has to look into what is happening in the member states and guarantee that there is a consultation which is open and transparent. Otherwise, all these efforts to build a national strategic plan will be not the correct efforts that have been put on the table. And I will stop for now. As I said, I would like to use this presentation as a base for discussing with you what direction we should take to further develop organic and agroecology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduardo, also for sticking with the time. There was a lot of interesting content there. I hope we will go back later to digest a bit what you have been proposing. Just a bit of zoom out and recall a bit what's agroecology about. So agroecology is a paradigm shift. No, isn't just a practice or something a little innovation. We talk a lot about knowledge. We talk about changing relationship between consumers and producers. And you talked a lot about budget. You talked about responsible governance and measures. I was wondering if from your side you consider other CAP interventions that can be relevant for accelerating the organic transition, besides the eco schemes that Célia is going to go in depth a bit soon, or besides the support for maintenance and conversion. Is there anything else that you think we should be looking at in the CAP strategy plans?
Yeah, there are 2 things I would like to mention, and for me are very crucial. I mean, if you see my background, you will understand why. But we need to have strong, independent advisory services. Yeah, this can be achieved with the CAP, because the CAP has a measure for advisory services. We need to make sure that this paradigm shift is accompanied by professional people who can help our farmers to not only make the change, but then to keep this changing behavior in future. And this can only be achieved if we have strong advisory services, or as we call it in the Brussels bubble, strong agricultural knowledge innovation system. Yeah, and this linked to the other aspect I wanted to mention, because you asked me to talk about the CAP today, but the CAP is one of the tools. We have to, if we want to make this paradigm shift, we need to use more tools. What was great of having organic as a central into the Green Deal is that we have an action plan for organic. If you read the action plan, there is a very important success for us as a community of people who wants to change the food system, is that the Commission has committed to invest 30% of the research and innovation budget for agricultural topics into research and innovation for organic, or with interesting for the organic. and which include indeed agroecology. I mean, so it's something that is encompassed into this target of 25% organic farming, and is encompassed into the target of 30% for research. Research and innovation is crucial. It's important, and with the right advisory service in place, we can really bring the innovation on the ground. Our farmer needs that we bring their innovation on the ground. They need to understand how this innovation can be applied. Is it social innovation? Is it technical innovation? Is this technological innovation? Doesn't matter. I mean, we need to have a big set of tools that can be used by our farmer to enhance this transition, and we need people who are able to support them. So this would be my message. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. So we are opening our focus not only eco schemes, not only agri-environmental climate measures for conversion and maintenance, but another broader set of tools the CAP can offer to promote this transition. Now we will go in depth into one of these because they are considered a novelty. And we have here an expert in this, Célia and Nyssens. Célia, you have been looking in depth the eco schemes drafts that have been proposed in the member states. What could you tell us about? What have you found? What are your perceptions? Thank you.
Thank you, Matteo. I will share my screen, and as you see, I was actually asked to answer 2 questions. So I will start with the first one, which is more general, and then zoom in on eco schemes after that. So the first question that I was asked to answer is, how can we make the CAP compatible with the EU Green Deal? And to answer that, I will very briefly maybe look back at what is the CAP actually? What is this new CAP? And what you can see on this slide is in gray, all of the measures that are in the CAP, which are essentially, maybe with some tweaks, a copy-paste of the current Common Agricultural Policy. And in blue, you see the new aspects. So by and large, it's quite clear, I think, on this slide, this new CAP is not very different from the last one. We do have eco schemes in Pillar 1, which will account for about 25% of Pillar 1 budget. And we do have some new elements in the conditionality. Primarily, this means that what was in greening in the past has been brought into conditionality, in many cases with the same loopholes as what we had in the current CAP. And then what is the Green Deal? Well, I don't want to repeat too much what's already been said by Eduardo. Maybe to add to what he already said, let's remember that the Green Deal, in addition to the specific targets for the agriculture sector, has an overarching ambition to reach climate neutrality by 2050, to drastically cut greenhouse gas emissions in this decade, and to put biodiversity back on the path to recovery. This is the words from the biodiversity strategy, by 2030, which is not a small task. And so, oops, there was supposed to be an animation there, but never mind. About a year ago, I believe, while trilogues were starting, we published 10 tests for a Green Deal compatible farming policy, where we laid out what it would actually mean for the Common Agricultural Policy to be in line with the European Green Deal. But it was quite clear when we published this that these 10 tests were just within reach, but very much sort of on the very high end of the ambition spectrum that was sort of still on the table. Whereas what we observed in trilogues is that the ambition went down gradually. And so that really gave us the impression that this whole talk of trying to make the CAP compatible with the Green Deal was a bit like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. This CAP was not designed to deliver on the Green Deal. It was proposed by the previous Commission, which did not have environmental concerns at the top of its list of priorities. And it's been tweaked a little bit. Now there is ring fencing for eco schemes, but by and large, it is mostly a framework that will allow member states to do whatever they want. That is our analysis. What would it have meant to make this CAP compatible with the Green Deal? We believe there were 3 key priorities, which cover different parts of the CAP. But the first one would have been to have an actual performance orientation. We often hear from the Commission that this new CAP is more performance oriented, but that is just not true. Actually, member states are not required to set any targets for the environmental improvements that they want to achieve, for the economic improvements that they want to achieve for their farmers. They're only setting targets on the area of agricultural land that they want to be covered by specific voluntary measures, which is in itself an incentive to have very unambitious voluntary measures so that they are covering a very large area of land. Secondly, we would have needed to put a lot more money into the transition if we wanted this CAP to deliver on the Green Deal. Eduardo has already talked quite a lot about this. Our analysis follows very much his conclusions. And thirdly, we would have needed to make sure that this new CAP does not continue to put money in harmful practices, in harmful models, which requires very strict safeguards in the policy framework, legally binding safeguards, and we are lacking those. So based on these 10 tests, when there was an agreement in last June between the co-legislators, we reviewed what the level of ambition would be. And I'm not going to go in much detail here. This is all available in our publication online, but jointly with Greenpeace and BirdLife, the EEB found that on the vast majority of our 10 tests, the score was a red traffic light, with just 2 exceptions that we deemed to be orange, one being funding for nature and climate-friendly farming, thanks to the budget for eco-schemes, which is not sufficient, but is a step in the right direction, as well as some requirements regarding public participation, which we thought were slightly better than what was proposed by the Commission. But on all the other dimensions, the rules are just way too lax. You can find more information in this publication. I'm not going in much detail right now, because now I want to shift a bit more to look at what's happening at national level. As Matteo mentioned, we at the EEB have been doing some analyses of the state of play jointly with partners, with BirdLife and WWF. So we have mobilized our networks to gather information about what's going on. In a first exercise that we're launching later today, so keep an eye out on our social media, we have essentially done a bit of a snapshot analysis based on the judgment of our members, of national experts, of what's the state of play on different dimensions stemming from those 10 tests. And the first one that you can see here for the first time, this is an exclusive, is on the test for space for nature. So this could also be called agroecological infrastructure, talking of hedges, flower strips, buffer strips, etc. Most countries are not on track to reach the biodiversity strategy target of having 10% of high biodiversity landscape features. In many countries, we don't have enough information to judge. We may have information about voluntary measures, maybe about how they will implement the conditionality standard on this dimension, but we don't know what target they're setting for themselves. And that makes it very hard to judge the level of ambition. We may not know either how much money they're planning to put behind the measures targeting this. And just a month and a half before the deadline for submission of those plans, it's quite problematic that there are still so many countries where civil society just does not have information. You can see here that we did not have every single EU member states in our analysis. We had 22 member states. The picture is quite similar when we looked at the allocation of funding for biodiversity protection. This is across the whole CAP, so on eco schemes and in Pillar 2. We asked our members, do you deem that there is sufficient funding and adequate measures to tackle the loss of biodiversity on farmland? And as you can see, no one said yes. Some said, maybe, it's mixed. We're sort of going in the right direction, but we're not quite there yet. And in some countries, it was a very clear no, we are not doing enough. Same story when it comes to climate, potentially even a bit worse. I see more red here, I think. And then the final question that I want to show you today, there were a few more that we will release on social media later today, was on the question for harmful subsidies. We defined those as, for example, subsidies through investment support that is worsening environmental issues. This could be, for example, subsidies for unsustainable irrigation, for the expansion of livestock infrastructure where maybe there is already too much livestock. This can also be coupled support, which is incentivizing higher production of intensive animal farming. And here again, except in Denmark, where our members were not concerned about there being specifically harmful subsidies, in most countries there are still concerns. So we are still very far away from where we need to be. I will now move on to zoom in on what was promised, the eco-schemes. So what I'm going to present now is the result of an analysis that is still ongoing, that we will publish next week, that we are doing with WWF and BirdLife, all again based on submissions from our networks, so from national NGOs. And the first overview that I'm sharing here is that when we asked our members to give us the list of their eco-schemes, and for each eco-scheme to tell us, how good do you think this scheme is? Is it good and likely to deliver? Okay, but needs improving? Bad, it's concerning, or even awful, it's actual greenwashing. This is the result. So this is purely based on the number of eco-schemes, not on where the money will go, which is quite an important difference. We are not able to make a similar graph on where the money will go because most countries still don't have that information. We also don't know what targets are set for those eco-schemes in most cases. So for example, where there is an eco-scheme on organic farming, we don't know what is the area that the government is hoping to subsidize through this eco-scheme. But this does show an interesting figure, I think. We see that 1 in 5 eco-schemes is deemed good and likely to deliver. And then another roughly 2 in 5 are on the right track, but not quite there yet. But still, there's more than a third of eco-schemes that are deemed bad or really bad. And that is really, really concerning, especially as we're seeing that in many cases, our members are telling us those eco-schemes that are bad actually have a level of payment that is too high for its level of ambition, whereas very often eco-schemes that are good or okay have a level of payment that is too low for their level of ambition. So this does not mean that those 63% of eco-schemes will actually really deliver. It will all depend on the money that's allocated to them. Another interesting finding from this survey that we've done is on the most common eco-schemes. Again, this is just about, is there an eco-scheme or not? It's not about how much money or how much surface this eco-scheme will cover. The single most common eco-scheme would be on what we would call the management and creation of landscape features or agroecological infrastructure, which is encouraging, but still this is the number of eco-schemes like this is still lower than the number of countries that we reviewed. So there are still several EU countries that do not have a single eco-scheme trying to subsidize the creation or maintenance of landscape features. The second most common one was on the extensive management of grasslands through grazing or mowing, which also we believe is generally a good thing, and most national experts deem these to be relatively good. And the third most common eco-scheme was for the use of cover or catch crops. And here we feel that that is a lot more problematic for 2 reasons. One, because cover crops or catch crops should actually really be included in conditionality. There is a conditionality rule for the soil cover in the sensitive period, which means essentially in most countries in winter. And yet we see that many European countries are wanting to spend money paying their farmers to use cover crops or catch crops in winter. On the other hand, a lot of farmers already have this obligation if they are in nitrates vulnerable zones as per the nitrates directive. So it means that some farmers are already obliged to do it, while others will be paid to do this, which is also problematic. So Some of our key findings from this analysis of the eco schemes, again, this isn't published yet, but it's on its way. We should be releasing all this next week, is that while we do see that there are quite a lot of well-designed schemes, very often they do not have sufficient budget to make them really effective, or sometimes they lack some safeguards or some clearer rules to make them truly effective. We also see quite a piecemeal approach in that the vast majority of eco schemes are just paying for one specific practice, like cover crops, rather than trying to incentivize farmers to adopt different practices that are necessary to be done together to achieve real environmental benefits. We did find 5 countries that had those multidimensional eco schemes, sometimes based on a point system. And those were generally deemed quite good by environmental NGOs. As I mentioned with the example of cover crops, we are seeing that elements that should be covered by conditionality and that were in the past covered by greening are quite often brought into eco schemes, which shows very clearly a lack of ambition, because this should be the baseline and it's actually becoming a voluntary measure that would be paid for. We also found that several eco schemes were focusing on techno fixes, which are unlikely to deliver environmental benefits. For example, paying for efficiency management in livestock rearing, or paying for precision farming without an actual requirement to reduce input use. We find that really quite problematic. And finally, we also see that several key environmental pressures are just not addressed at all through eco schemes. One example is the drainage of peatlands. There is only one eco scheme in Denmark which was deemed too unambitious, which addresses this issue of peatlands being drained and used in agriculture, despite all the calls to fund paludiculture, for example. So my last slide, I'm wrapping up, is a set of recommendations that we have been making to the Commission, and that based on this analysis, we reiterate. These are not new recommendations. We have been pushing these demands for several years now, but we're now seeing a real urgency in making them real. So the first one is very similar to what Eduardo already said. Eco schemes should not be paying for marginal improvements to models and practices that are not sustainable to start with. We need to support a genuine transition. The second one, which is in a way similar to that, but links to this issue around conditionality, is we should not be paying for what should be mandatory. What is in EU and national laws, what is in conditionality, should remain there, and then we pay for what is additional to that. Third recommendation is that we need to set clear baselines and targets, generally speaking, but especially in eco schemes that are targeting a more efficient use of resources or efficient use of inputs. None of those were found to have a clear target or clear benchmark for improvements, which means that we could very well pay for things that will not deliver improvements. We also need to make sure that practices that are paid for through eco schemes do not have environmental trade-offs, do not cause harm on other dimensions than the one that they are trying to address. And finally, this should be clear from what has already been said, we need proportionality between the level of ambition and the level of payment for eco schemes. And that's me done.
Thank you so much, Célia, for this extensive presentation. It's all new materials, it's new analysis, very fresh, up to date. So congratulations to the work you are doing with your networks. I would maybe add a question for you, a very quick question, before moving to Sonia. You know, eco schemes alone might not solve all the expectations for agroecology. So what are the other CAP ingredients that you would add to make sure that eco schemes are going to deliver? You mentioned already some elements for good eco schemes. What else do you recommend in terms of other interventions that can be linked to eco schemes?
Yes, that's absolutely true. And that is a bit of a caveat to our analysis of eco-schemes. We are looking only at one tool in the CAP toolbox, but we're looking at the one with the highest budget. We're looking at 9 billion euros every year that is going to be spent on eco-schemes over the whole EU, whereas other tools have much smaller budgets. So that's where and why we're expecting eco-schemes to do most of the work, I guess, and to push most of the effort. But it's very clear that several Pillar 2 measures especially are extremely relevant and need to be coherent with eco-schemes. So we're looking at investment support that needs to be, for example, paying for the planting of new trees, planting of new hedges, for farmers who need more adapted machinery for mechanical weeding or for agroecological practices. We also clearly need to use Pillar 2 agri-environment climate measures in coherence with eco-schemes. And in Pillar 1 as well, to be honest, there is coupled support that could be used also to support very extensive livestock farming, even to support extensification of livestock systems. And these are all elements that we will look at once we have more complete draft national plans. But it's quite striking that in many countries, they have started with eco schemes, and there is very little information on conditionality, very little information on investment support and other aspects of the CAP. So we are focusing on what we have information for.
Thank you so much, Célia. And your reply actually answered one of the questions we have received while you were talking. If there were any tips on how to integrate or bridge Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 to promote eco-schemes practices like agroforestry, for instance, which is not that in my knowledge, is not that promoted in the draft proposal. I don't know if you have found some examples of agroforestry under eco schemes.
Yes, we saw 4 examples, of which only one was for the planting of new trees. The 3 others were for the maintenance of existing systems.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's at least encouraging. There are some practices. We have got also another question from the Baptiste Gerard, but I think we are trying to clarify a bit the meaning of, if you can help us, Baptiste, to clarify your question. What do you mean exactly with integrating money on different area on targets? Just to make sure we are understood well your question. Otherwise, we move forward to our third speaker. We are moving now from a European cross-country analysis to a very grassroots, more provincial experience. Sonia, your presentation is about the role of provincial council. What can you tell us? Can you give us some hope that local or provincial council have the power indeed to design or implement the policies according to their needs?
Yes, thank you, Matteo. Yes, I totally agree that we have a lot to do from the local perspective, and I will try to explain you what we are doing. If you don't mind, I will share
Yes.
the screen just to use my presentation. Is it okay?
Yes, we do see everything.
Okay, great. Yeah, so good morning to all of you, of course. I'm very glad to be here and to have the opportunity to share and discuss with you about which can be the role of local governments in the implementation of agricultural and also food policies. We from the Provincial Council, we are developing a strategy, a local strategy for implementing local and sustainable food and agricultural systems within Barcelona's region, which is called, and you can see it, Barcelona Smart Rural. Our approach to agricultural and food systems is basically a local-based approach. The reason is not only because from the provincial government, we are supporting cities and towns to develop local food systems, but also because everything happening today, from global warming to the loss of agricultural land and the loss of farms, is telling us that we need a fundamental change in society and in our policies. From my point of view, the change that we need to make it will be by shifting away from global food systems to local farming activity and local food systems. So to develop this idea of relocalization of food systems, I would like to talk about what can be the role of cities in the development of sustainable food systems. That means, of course, a huge change if we take into account that agricultural policies until now has been mainly a European or national policy, but not a local policy. Secondly, I would like to talk about the main opportunities and constraints that we have in Barcelona in peri-urban agriculture. I will continue talking about the strategy that we have been developing during the last 20 years for protecting and managing peri-urban agricultural areas. And just to wrap up, I would like to share with you some final reflections and questions for the debate about the future of the European food and agricultural systems. So let's start about the role of cities in the development of sustainable food systems. It has been told, but I think that the reason why it will be so important, the role of cities in the development of sustainable food systems, is basically because cities will play a key role in the achievement of sustainable development objectives. You know, today more than half the world's populations live in cities. By 2030, it is projected that 6 in 10 people will be urban dwellers, and by 2050, 2/3 of all the civilization will be living in cities. So it is clear that urban food policies and the decision about how cities feed their citizens will have an important impact on climate change, but also on agricultural systems. We need to reduce 50% of emissions, we know, by 2030. And we know also that 25% of these emissions are as a consequence of food systems. So according to one of the Sustainable Development Goals, the number 12, which is about ensuring sustainable consumption and production patterns, we need to think about what we eat, where food comes from, and how we are producing, transforming, and distributing food. Of course, embracing healthy and nutrition diets, sustainable farming methods, and reducing food waste. But the question is, can the development of urban and peri-urban agriculture really mitigate the social, the environmental, and the economic impact of producing food thousands of miles of where consumers actually live? Can cities play a key role on the achievement of this goal? And I will try to answer. So to me, the answer is yes. Of course, cities can play a key role in the development of local and sustainable food systems. However, any change in all the food system that you can see here, from food production, going through transforming, delivering, selling, consuming, and waste management, must be seen from an holistic point of view. So we need really a systemic change in our society and also in our urban policies. To me, we should have a kind of food department in each city and town to set the connections between urban and agricultural cities. Let's go to some inspiring documents we can say which are, in my opinion, the most interesting documents in Europe talking about local and sustainable food systems. So since the year 2004, there has been, I think, a growing number of European documents focusing on the importance of preserving agricultural areas near the cities, like the opinion of the EESC of the year 24, and also on the development of local food systems. Most recently, I think it's very important to highlight the Milano Food Policy Pact, in Italy, as the first document in Europe and in the world, which recognizes the important role of cities in the implementation of sustainable food systems. And also, it was approved also last year, the From Farm to Fork strategy you have told about, which stresses the need to develop also sustainable food systems. But to me, there are two key differences in both strategies, in Milano Urban Food Policy Pact and in the From Farm to Fork strategy. The first one is about the leading actors of these policies. And the second one is about shortening distances between the place where food is produced and the place where food is consumed. I would say that while Milano Food Policy Pact highlights the importance of proximity, of diversity, of family farms, and the role of cities as a leading actor of these policies, to me is not really clear whether the From Farm to Fork strategy will support this idea of local food production and consumption or not, and the role of cities in the implementation of these policies. And this is something that maybe we can discuss later on. But now, what about the province of Barcelona? You can see here a map, and the city of Barcelona is located here. So if you look to the slide, we show you the difference on the land uses between the year 1956 on the left and the year 2018 on the right. So the pink color shows us the change in farmland use. As you can see on the left and on the right comparing, we have lost almost 40% of the farmland in the province of Barcelona that we had 60 years ago. And this is one of the most important problems facing peri-urban agricultural areas. The problem is that we are not protecting our lands. We don't have legislation about farmland protection in Europe, nor in Spain or in Catalonia. And of course, this is a huge problem. If we compare this data with European data, for me, it's very important to say that in Europe, we are losing each year around 800,000 hectares of farmland. And of course, this is a huge problem. What about farm businesses or the number of holdings in the province of Barcelona? Also on this slide, you can see the evolution in the number of farms between 1989 and 29. And what we see is that in this period, the loss of farms each year is of 716 farms each year that we are losing. That means that if we continue with this trend, maybe in 15, 20 years, we won't have any more farms or farmers in the province of Barcelona. And the third problem, not only in Barcelona and Catalonia, but also in Europe, is that we are seeing land grabbing. That means that 1%, I'm sorry, this is in Catalan, 1% of all the farms in Europe is managing 20% of European farmland, but 3% of the farms are managing 50% of all European farmland. That means that we have like a kind of concentration of farmland in a very small number of holdings. But which are the opportunities? Here on this slide, on this map, you can see this is the map of the province, the boundary of the province. And in dark green, you see the municipalities, which have more than 25% of the agricultural land under organic production. And the white areas shows the municipalities which are under 10%. So you can see that there is more agricultural land close to Barcelona under the organic production schemes compared with other rural areas in Barcelona. So we can say that there is an increasing number of initiatives very close to the city of Barcelona within the metropolitan region, trying to rebuild the connections between farmers and local communities, promoting organic production, and shortening the distances between farmers and consumers. And this is more or less what you can see also here, that in Barcelona's metropolitan region, there is now a growing demand on local food, a growing demand also from the municipalities to develop farmers markets and to create more reconnections between the citizens, the consumers, and the farmers, producers. So I think we have huge opportunities in these metropolitan areas really to promote short supply chains, organic farming, and this relation between farmers and consumers. What we are working to be more concrete in Barcelona's province. Our starting point, I would say, this is the model of the agricultural parks that I would like to explain you now. So you see here the city of Barcelona. This is the Mediterranean Sea on the right. The red line shows us the boundary of the province, and the white line shows us the boundary of the metropolitan region. These red circles show us the location of these agricultural parks that we have now in the province of Barcelona. We have actually 7 agricultural parks, which represents almost 20%, 15% of the total farmland that we have in Barcelona's provincial, in the Barcelona's province. And also, it's important to highlight that of the 311 municipalities that we have in the province, 57% municipalities are part of these agricultural parks. But what is an agricultural park? So an agricultural park, the main goal of the agricultural parks basically is to preserve farmland and to work together the different public and private bodies to achieve economically viable farms within, of course, a framework of sustainable agriculture integrated within the local and natural policies and areas. The agricultural park model is basically aiming at managing an agricultural area via 3 key elements or instruments. The first one is preserving the farmland using what we have here, the land use plan that allows us to protect and to preserve agricultural areas from urban pressure and urban growing. The second tool that is part of this model of agricultural parks is the management body. That means to create a specific body where all the public and private stakeholders can work together to set the objectives and the strategies of these agricultural parks. And the 3 elements of this model of agricultural parks is the management plan. That means a document where we set the strategies and all the actions that we want to implement really to achieve the main goal that we have set between all the stakeholders that are working together. So I will explain you a little bit what is this management plan that I have told about. So the management plan with all this set of actions to develop agricultural areas basically establish strategies, objectives, and means of implementation of the various areas of management. And based on the park's objective and, of course, on the agreements between all the stakeholders. The main management areas of the agricultural parks are, first of all, sustainable agricultural production. Second one, marketing promotion and promotion of local consumption. I would say that these are the three main areas of action of these agricultural parks. Just to give you some examples of actions that these agricultural parks are working on to support agricultural entrepreneurs. We are promoting what we call land banks. That means this is a tool to make it easier for new entrants or young farmers that want to rent a piece of land to get an agreement with landowners to rent or to lease the land they want to use to develop their activity. We also offer support to young farmers, to new entrants, to start their entrepreneurship or their project into the farming activities. We also work a lot on the use of local branding to add value or to valuing local food production. And we are implementing also what we call public food factories. That means that we offer the service for producers, for farmers, to use this kind of agro factories to transform their products in order to add value to their production. Which kind of activities of promotion are we developing also from these agricultural parks? We are organizing farmers markets that make easier for farmers to sell directly their products in the city. We also try to work with small groceries, small shops, really to promote the selling of local food also in these small shops situated in the cities. And we are also supporting consumers to organize themselves in order to create food co-ops or consumers cooperatives so that the consumers can really decide to which farmers they want to buy the products and how they want really buy or organize their feeding. But which will be the next steps in the next years? I think that in the next years there will be a change in this model of the agricultural parks, because we have been working a lot with the municipalities and with the farmers on the preservation of the territory of agricultural land, on promoting local food, on helping farmers or supporting farmers with their businesses. But we think we have still to strengthen the relation between agricultural farmland, farmers, food, with the city and with the consumers. And how are we going to do that? Our proposal for the municipalities is the implementation of what we call food governance. What means food governance? Food governance, that means that the cities and towns can decide that food becomes really a public policy in the municipality. That means that they work together with all the stakeholders participating in the food system, really to implement, to develop, to support sustainable and local food systems and agricultural systems. So we are working on a methodology to share with the municipalities. We propose the methodology for the implementation of what we call a food plan. And this methodology is basically structured in 5 steps. The first step for a municipality who really wants to implement a local food policy would be to create like a group of the main stakeholders of the food system. The second one would be to write the charter on local food, and that means an agreement of all the stakeholders. And this document should set the main principles, the main goals of the food system for a municipality, for a city, or for a town. The next step would be to elaborate, to work on the diagnosis of the food system, just to know how the food system in a city or a town is working or is functioning. The fourth step would be to create a food council. The food council would be the management body, we can say, of what we call the food plan. And the fifth step would be really the design of the food plan, the management, and the implementation and assessing and monitoring of the food plan. So to wrap up, I would like to think about, or to make some questions, to put some questions about which could be the relation between the CAP and the local policies. Is this a tale of disconnection? Well, in my opinion, I'm not sure if food will be also an EU public policy in the future. This is a question that I would like to debate with the other speakers. I would like to mention that Peter Schmidt, who is a member of the EESC, he answers to this question saying yes. He says that it is time for a comprehensive and holistic European food policy. Let's see if in the future we will be able to see in Europe really a food policy for the whole Europe. The second question or reflection that I wanted to share with you is, cities can play, of course, a great role, an important role in the implementation of local food systems, but how can we work together, the cities, the regions, the member states, and also Europe, to really achieve these common goals on the implementation of sustainable and local food systems? And the last question, just to wrap up, is just some questions about which kind of farmers do we want in Europe? I mean, which will be the role of family farmers in the future of EU food systems? Are they going to disappear, family farms, because we will have very huge farms in Europe which will manage all our farmland, or no, or not? Are we really going to promote these family farms, trying to reconnect our agricultural areas with the cities? And last question, but not least, of course, which will be the role of local food with this idea of proximity in urban food systems? So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonia. It was a very comprehensive presentation, going from policies to initiatives. I was very surprised by the amount of data that a council can have, and the policy analysis that can be delivered. That's already, I think, one of the basic to move forward. You know, if you don't have data showing how much land is concentrated, how many farmers are moving to organic, you don't move forward. So thank you so much for your presentation. We have got, while you were all speaking, we have got a number of questions. Some of them are clarifying questions. Others were more deepening questions. So we have not heard Eduardo for a while, so maybe I will start from Eduardo. Eduardo, there has been a question regarding supporting organic farming in a context of organic market. So we are talking about prices, demands. Sometimes demand is going up, sometimes other statistics say that it's going down. What are your thoughts on this? How do you see the CAP supporting organic farming in an organic market context? And there was a second question about research. How do you see any potential risk that European research money allocated to organic can be deviated, hijacked, going towards some kind of solutions that are not fulfilling the ethical expectation in the supply chain?
Thank you. Thank you for these two very interesting questions, and allow me some time to answer to that. Okay.
Yes.
So first of all, the price issue. I mean, this strategy put by the Commission, forward by the Commission, talks about a target for organic land. So we always approach it like we have a target to reach 25% organic land. But if we look at the organic action plan, we will find a better understanding on how to reach this 25% land. Because reaching 25% land has to be seen in an holistic approach, in which we have, from one side, a policy like the CAP that can push farmers to become, that might push farmers to become organic, or to have more and more, let's say, practices to improve their sustainability. But from the other side, the action plan also has some pull policy, or pull recommendation, how we can increase the market. I mean, we have to make sure, if you allow me to say that we do not run into the same mistakes of the conventional farming sector. We have to make sure that having 25% of organic land in Europe means keeping the marginality for our farmers. So it means rethinking carefully our food system, also in terms of relationship between the different actors of the supply chain. And, transferring the value of production equally or fairly, let me say, to the different actors. So how can we avoid that the price drops? We can avoid it in many ways. And I will not say all the ways we can do that, because we may need a webinar only for that. But I think one aspect is to really work on supply chains. We need to bring the people together to make sure that farmers, food industry, and the retailer sector work together to build supply that then are sexy, appetitable for the consumers. We have to build new markets. Yeah, and I will go in a second to maybe talk about this new market issue. And then we need to make education. We need to tell people why they should consume organic food, why organic can deliver more than other kind of food towards the broader society. So we need to educate people to eat organic, and we need to promote organic. I will refer a bit to the action plan, because I think it's a missing element of the discussion which can be useful to bring in. When it goes to promotion, the European Commission has ring-fenced part of the budget of their promotion policy for quality products for organic farming. So there are money there that can be used to promote organic into the member states and to explain citizens why organic can be a game change if we massively start eating organic food. So one recommendation: look at this promotional policy. Make sure we use that in the right way. The European Commission is also recommending in the action plan to use the milk and fruit scheme. There is a scheme in the European policy which is called milk and fruit in the school. So the European Commission is subsidizing member states to bring milk and fruit into the schools, and accompanying milk and fruit administration with education. And the action plan is recommending that this policy will go into organic, so that there will be more organic food served under the scheme, but there will be also more education about organic. We have to make sure that we will use this opportunity. Then I want to go to new market, and maybe trying also to answer one question from Sonia, which I appreciate very much her presentation. I mean, a new market, a direct market can be created by policymakers, is the market of public procurement. So what we call in Brussels sustainable public procurement or green public procurement can be a direct tool that policymakers can have to really create a new market. Only the city of Rome every day is serving 1 million meals into public canteens for schools, for hospitals, and so on. So 1 million meal. This is a huge market that we can create if public authorities go in this direction. So the Organic Action Plan is giving a direction to public authorities, saying that we need a national target for GPP, for green public procurement, but I think we need local target, regional target, provincial target, city target. I was last week at a summit of Organic City. There is an association called Organic City Network, where they exchange and learn from each other how to do that. And I learned that the city of Copenhagen has 90% of their canteens organic, that the city of Paris is only outsourcing from 250 kilometers from the city to make sure that the local context, the peri-urban context, is really contributing to the feeding of the citizen in Paris. So GPP can really represent an important tool from one side, because we can promote a new market. We can make sure that organic products are served in the school, but also because when you start serving in the school these products, you can accompany always with an explanation of why it's important to eat organic. And to answer a question that often I'm asked when I talk about GPP, because I'm being told, even when I bring my kids to school, if we do it organic, then we pay more. That's not true. Maybe we pay a little bit more when we pay for the meal, but we save a lot of money when we go to half taxes. In Denmark, for each euro invested into organic food in public canteens, there are 35 euros saved by the administration in public health expenses. So that's just one of the number I can give you, but this is really important. Then I think I move to the other questions about research and innovation. First of all, we need to make sure that we tell to policymakers what research and innovation we need. Yeah, because otherwise it's difficult. They need our input. And IFOAM Organics Europe, together with the EEB, but also together with Agroecology Europe, are working in a platform which is called European Technology Platform Organics, which stands for Organic and Agroecology Research and Innovation. In this platform, we are discussing what research and innovation needs we have and what should be financed into, for example, the context of Horizon Europe. So first step, we need to make sure that we talk each other and we know what we need, and then present it to the policymakers. Then second step, we need to monitor. And this is something that the European Technology Platform Organics is doing. So TP Organics is monitoring how the money is spent, what kind of call will be published by the Commission. But that's not enough. I mean, we can have the best recognition of needs. We can communicate them to the Commission. The Commission can transform these needs into public calls. But then there is another phase. It's the phase in which people has to be together and apply for these calls. And this is the phase where we, as movement, are failing. We are failing in that. I've been looking at the data about Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe is the framework for research and innovation of the European Union. They had a special destination call. I mean, a destination is, let's say, a number of calls, research and innovation calls for biodiversity. Most of these calls have been unattended. So there were millions of euros ready to work on biodiversity. No one submitted project to work on that. So that's a failure of our system. It's a failure of the movements who want to transform food and farming if we are not able to apply for these research and innovation funds. So it's indeed true. We have to monitor to make sure that the money are addressed in the right way, but then we also have to be good in applying for this project and making up competitive research and innovation consortia who can then implement project on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. We will come back certainly on research, innovation, maybe trying to look also at practical level how we can link with the local authorities. But let me move now to Célia, because we have received a couple of interesting questions regarding eco schemes. Eco schemes, the practices can be, or at least that's the Commission approach, can be anything that meet at least 4 of the CAP specific objectives that were the easy conditions, let's say, set up in the legislations. That means also that based on a proposal, there were some practices proposed by the Commission. It included also precision farming. What is your view following also a question from the participant, what is your view about using eco schemes to support precision farming? In general, any other practices that can a bit deviate from the original purposes of the eco scheme? And if you can a bit elaborate on how what's the methodology you used for your screening of the eco schemes drafts? Thank you.
Yes, gladly. Thank you. So on the eco schemes, indeed, so eco schemes is essentially our payments per hectare, or they can also be paid per animal, for one of the following objectives. So climate mitigation or adaptation, more efficient use of natural resources. That's what's the sort of written in the regulation. We would have preferred protection, but it's efficient use. Biodiversity protection and animal welfare and antimicrobial resistance. And as part of those very broad objectives, the European Commission published earlier this year in January a list of example of practices that the member states could fund, and they had included in their precision farming. Now, as EEB, we can see in some context a use for precision farming, but precision farming is very broad. It really doesn't mean much. You need to be a bit more specific. We do believe that it's quite that there is a use for utilizing and collecting more data in the agriculture sector. That could potentially increase and improve the environmental performance of the sector. But what's really clear is that precision farming on its own is not enough. It's not going to solve the major environmental issues that we're experiencing in agriculture. So what we're seeing is that member states are proposing to subsidize precision farming through eco schemes with the aim of reducing fertilizer use, of reducing pesticides use. In some cases, that might, make things slightly better, but precision farming in itself, whether it's using a GPS-guided tractor, applying pesticides with much more precise applicators or sort of machines, using a map of your field and only applying logic. We're not talking of a paradigm shift here. We're still in a very intensive extractive model, which does not necessarily restore the ecosystems and the soils. And so we're not really tackling the root causes of the problems. That's one concern that we have around precision farming. The other one is that we really do not see a good reason for paying for precision farming, even where it can be beneficial, through eco schemes. Precision farming is essentially about using different machines and machinery and technologies. We could envision to support farmers to acquire those, but we should not be paying them per hectare for using a better tractor. This is just complete nonsense. And especially considering that in many cases, or at least that is what they say, precision farming will reduce your use of inputs. So it really should be cheaper than non-precision farming. So we really see very big concerns there. The good thing, though, is that we saw only very few countries are proposing to pay for precision farming through eco schemes. If I remember correctly, it was only 4 or maximum 5 countries. But still, those 4 or 5 cases are quite concerning. Then on the other question on the methodology, quite quickly, I think the question was about the snapshot and the map of Europe that I showed. So to clarify, this is not a very in-depth scientific analysis of what's in those draft plans. We do not have the human resources to do that. What this is really a sort of bird's eye view of what is currently being planned based on the judgment of national experts. So on that specific question, which I think Baptiste or Jean-Baptiste was asking about, which was about money for biodiversity protection and for climate action, it's on one hand about the quantity of money that our members have information on, and on the other hand about the quality of that spending. So we're not really sort of narrowing it down. We're not looking at very specific measures here. We ask them a very broad question of, do you think there is enough funding and high enough quality funding to address biodiversity protection and climate action? And the answers were generally not at all or not enough.
Thank you, Célia. I hope that is clear. I then would like to move to the next speaker. Sonia, we have received a couple of questions that might be concerning your work you're doing at local level. As you know, the farm to fork strategy was a first attempt to move from just a sectorial approach towards a more holistic food system policy approach. The delivery of this strategy is still to be seen, but we were wondering if you believe that the farm to fork strategy was really an holistic approach to food to design agri-food policies at local level. If that was translated also, could have been translated also in your action. And also, finally, I wanted to ask whether you think that local authorities can truly support grassroots movements, or in some cases it can be also the other way around. I don't know, hijacking or capturing the revolutionary power that these grassroots movements can have. So, based on your experience, what do you think?
Okay, but from farm to fork strategy, I think that we have to wait a little bit to see how is the development of this strategy. But in my opinion, one key point that is not clear in this strategy is about proximity, is what I was talking before. I mean, we talk a lot about sustainability in terms of production, in terms of transformation, and so on. But the transport of food is not integrated, I think, in this vision of sustainability. In our opinion, it is really very, very important to have these peri-urban agricultural areas close to the city. And with these agricultural areas, really, we can grant that we have sustainable agricultural systems and also sustainable food systems. Because if we have to transport food from 1,000 kilometers, in our opinion, this is not sustainable. But I'm not sure if really Europe thinks the same. So I think it's an important point that should be clarified, which will be the role of this proximity of these local agricultural areas close to where citizens and consumers live. In my opinion, it is not clear, absolutely.
Well, agroecology indeed is very much based on adding value locally and privileging short food supply chains. We are aware that it's impossible at this stage to get rid of a global food market, but privileging is what also Eduardo was suggesting to us in the public procurement law.
Yep, just to go further with this, I mean in Europe, if we really agree that it's important to preserve this proximity idea of agricultural production areas, then we need in Europe a definition of what local or proximity means. I think in Europe, proximity means the whole Europe. I mean, if I'm eating, I don't know, or people in the Northern Europe are eating tomatoes from Spain, this is proximity. I think this is the idea of Europe. And I insist on that. We should verify, clarify what does proximity means, and we need a definition on what proximity is.
I would like to ask if other speakers want to react on this.
No, I would like just to support a statement from Célia. I think it's important. It's important that when we talk about digitalization, we do not demonize the tool, which is a tool that might be useful. So it's not that we don't look at technology as a useful tool, but it's a tool. It's a tool that has to be used in a system, a complex system. So if you use the tool into an industrial system, we are just feeding a vicious circle of industrial agriculture. This will be just another industrial solution to an industrial system. Instead, if we use the tool into a system like an agroecological system, in which we have virtuous circle and not vicious circle, then this tool can be useful. But I would like also to underline that we have to look also what is behind the tool. Yeah, I mean, we need also to understand how these tools are developed, what is the environmental impact of these tools. I think this is an aspect that sometimes we forget to mention. We all know, but we forget to mention. And instead, this has an impact, as an impact on the environment, but also as an impact on the society, because we know that very often to set up, to put together certain technology, there is some people who is damaged. Yeah. To make sure that this technology are developed, and I think we have to keep it in mind if we want to be working accordingly to the principle of agroecology and to the principle of organic. So that's an important aspect for me. When it goes to Sonia, I think when you talk about proximity, I challenge you. I think you should have your idea of proximity for the city of Barcelona, for the elements that can be found in proximity. So I expect that for you, the proximity for a banana is a Canaria, but cannot be the park of Barcelona, But I challenge you because I know that for cities and public authority is there is a difficulty sometime in putting on the desk public procurement where proximity is mentioned with a given range of kilometers. And there is a problem with the competition law. There are many problems that are there, but I know that other cities are doing that. So I'm happy to put you in contact with these other cities and challenge yourself to say, well, maybe we can do like Paris does, 250 kilometers. So maybe we can do like other people do, it's, you must know that there is people who is trying out and they are successful, and maybe you can exchange with them.
No, yeah, we are in touch with other people working on public food procurement. But the problem normally is not we can manage this. This is not a problem. Or yes, because I think the most important thing would be here in the government of Catalonia, in Catalonia, to have a mandatory law saying that it is mandatory really to eat local and organic food in the school, like in France. In France, they have. This is compulsory to eat, to use this kind of food. If things are mandatory, I'm sorry, but then things work. And we don't have this legal framework in Europe, nor in Spain, nor in Catalonia. And for me, this is the key point.
Well, I hope to say, I hope that we can say not yet.
Okay,
in the way that there will be there is a recommendation of the Commission to work on a national target for organic into public procurement, and we know that there will be a new legislation coming up where this will be discussed. So we hope that then we can put into stones what has to be mandatory. Yeah.
Organic and local, Eduardo.
Yes,
Not,
I mean, I think
some
this will come together.
Some European countries have already this organic food at canteens, at schools. But in my opinion, we have to work on the idea of organic and local.
Yes, with the possibility, of a flexible approach depending from the local, because there are some local who have no real proximity. That's another point.
As local as possible, of course. We cannot eat bananas in Barcelona, produce bananas, but as local as possible, of course.
Maybe with the climate change, you might in a few years. Let's see.
Yeah, you're right.
Talking about climate change, we have got an interesting question from one of the listeners today regarding Canary Islands. Maybe Célia, you can help us with this question. The question is about whether there are enough, or you can have some examples of incentives coming from the CAP that can support small farmers in very arid conditions, where the water is a big problem. Soil desertification, soil erosion are the main challenges. It's not only a problem for Canary Islands, it's a problem also the region I'm from, in Italy, the Puglia region. So is there any hope that this that environmental spending, let's say, is really targeting the environmental needs of certain region. Do you see that direction?
That's what should be happening in theory. That is really what this CAP is supposed to be about, is member states identifying their needs and then tailoring their interventions to those needs. So we should have Spain identifying as a very clear need, the need to support those regions, not just in the Canary Islands, but also in many other parts of Spain. In practice, we're seeing that often, if needs are properly identified, which is not always the case, that doesn't necessarily mean that there is then a clear and robust intervention logic to then address those needs. And even if there is, that's not necessarily with the right solutions. So we are still stuck in this idea, in the sort of the past paradigm of, if you're lacking water, put in place a new irrigation system, and rather than rethink the system, we are still in the sort of techno fixes. I can't speak specifically for what's happening in the Canary Islands. I'm afraid. I'm sorry, I haven't looked at that specific case, but I would expect that probably that's what's happening. And it's not for lack of trying from environmental NGOs in the south of Spain, in the south of Europe and in Spain, who are trying to promote better solutions. But that's still not quite gotten to the sort of conscious thoughts of decision makers. So we really do need to be using eco schemes and Pillar 2 measures to support adaptation to climate change and to support agroecological practices, which we know are more resilient in the face of droughts, etc. The tools are there. I think that is a really important thing to bear in mind, is that even though we are very critical of the CAP, it does have the tools to address our problems. Those tools are just not used in the right way, and they're just not deployed ambitiously enough to really step up to the challenge.
Thank you, Célia. Just to wrap up this session, we're almost ending our time. Maybe a last question to Sonia, coming from one of the participants. We talk about land. You mentioned some very scary data on the land concentration, which is not only the case of Catalonia, unfortunately. What do local or provincial authorities do, or what can they do to ensure that we reverse that trend of land concentration? Can you give some ideas of example? Shortly,
yeah,
please.
I mentioned it, but yeah, I didn't have really time enough to explain our experience. We are working on the development of what we call land bank. I don't know if you are familiar with this term, but okay, this it can be defined as a management tool to create a kind of intermediation service between landowners and new entrants or young farmers to really want to become a farmer. How does it work? We have a kind of register where landowners can say, okay, I would like to offer my land for new entrants. And where also in this register, new entrants or young farmers can apply for a piece of land. If the landowners say, yes, okay, I will offer my land to a young person, and the young person, and they get an agreement, we sign a kind of contract between the landowner and this new entrant, so that really these young people or person can really be an entrepreneur in the agricultural sector. More or less, this is the idea.
Sonia, is land provision under the competence of a local authority or as well as a national authority in Spain and Catalonia?
This is regional authority. That means the government of Catalonia, not really the province. But this is like this is an intermediation tool. It's not really a legislative tool. We use this. I mean, this is not really our competence, but we can use this kind of intermediation.
I'm asking to make a
Yeah.
comparison with Italian case,
Yeah.
and to reflect whether local authorities have also that can also take that space of managing. At the moment, it's centralized through ISMEA.
They can have the space because you just have a official register. So an official register and a technician who is doing this role, playing this role of intermediation between both.
Okay.
But it's not
Okay.
really a legal tool, it's a management tool. So that
Okay.
if municipalities want, they really can use this.
Thank you so much to every speaker. I think we have gathered a lot of inputs. I'm very sorry that Mr. Uros present was not present. Otherwise, we would have heard a lot more about organic action plan. But that was covered by Eduardo. Thank you, Eduardo. We are really in the ending of this session. There would be a poll for you, for the participants to answer. I guess this poll will be, the link to this poll will be available to you very soon in the comment session. I'm having a look. I will have the support from the technical responsibles people there, but it's basically a tool that should help us to make some kind of priorities on policy recommendation. I'm trying to read. Yes, the poll is available, visible for all the attendees. I cannot ask you if it's all fine, but maybe Elena can help us.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I also take the opportunity to thank you all for these really interesting speeches and way to address also the from the local to the global or European scale, how to make our policy more consistent. And indeed, so from the result of the poll, we see that so there have been 25% of the people who said that we should prioritize. So the question was, what changes need to occur to make the cap as robust as possible? And there have been, so the two first policies that you as speaker brought up and who mostly were voted for were, so firstly, paying farmers for the production of public goods, especially the delivery of ecosystem services. And the second one was prioritize system-based measures that favor the territorial scale, which go beyond the farm gate. So I think that was well described also by Sonia. And also, yeah, there have been also response for phase-out subsidies that support hectares with a basic income per full-time equivalent person. So that is kind of a more general topic that can be addressed, and also support an effective transition, not marginal improvement in sustainable models. So that's the results. Yeah, thank you a lot. Also, thank you, Matteo, for this great moderation. And so if there are some final words to be said, you can take the opportunity, and we are really also looking forward to go further in the discussion after this forum as well, to change the cap and make it more sustainable.
Thank you, Elena, for this closing remarks and report us the findings of this poll. From my side, thank you to all speakers for your contributions. It was a pleasure. Please, to all the audience, get in touch with Sonia, Célia, and Eduardo in case you have any further questions or proposal. You know what they are working about, and you know what they are committed to. So please be in touch with them. I think it's important that we build a network. We build because alone we don't move in this paradigm shift. It was a pleasure for me to moderate this session. I didn't present myself. I'm Matteo Metta from ARC 2020, the Agriculture and Rural Convention. Follow us as well on our web page. We are always trying to help with anything that promotes this paradigm shift. It was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matteo. Thank you to Sonia and Célia. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
you too.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you to Agroecology Europe. Bye bye.
Have a good day. Thank you a lot. And also just a few words for the attendees online. So we will now have a lunch break for 2 hours. And I invite you to go check the networking area. So you can have like one-to-one meetings, or you can also go see the expo area where we uploaded videos that you can also have a look at. And yeah, also just to remember, so we also uploaded a video from the scientific award ceremony organized by the Agropolis Foundation. So this event will take place so tomorrow evening there will be a roundtable with the awards laureates, and also there will be an award ceremony during the dinner. So we look forward to that, and see you soon.